Plan. My name is Naomi Francis, and I'll moderate this session for you. At the end of our presentations, we'll take questions from members of the media. Let me, though, welcome formally to the proceedings the Honourable Darrell Vaz, MP, the Minister without Portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, the Honourable Floyd Green, MP, Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, representing the Honourable Audley Shaw, who is the substantive minister. We also have with us the real boss, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, CD, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, as well as the Office of the Prime Minister. His Worship, the Mayor, Councillor Norman Scott from the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation, or his representative. Mr. Lenworth Fulton, OD, the President of the Jamaica Agricultural Society. Mr. Joseph Shukir, the Managing Director of SCJ Holdings Limited. Mr. Milverton Reynolds, CD, the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica. And Mr. Peter Clark, JP, Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority. You'll be hearing from all of those persons I mentioned, and may I also welcome representatives from state entities as well as council caretakers and, of course, Member of Parliament for East Portland, Mrs. Anne-Marie Vaz. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this very, very important and informative press conference. We'll be having a very interactive and multimedia presentation. And so to do the official greetings, may I invite the representative of the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation? Not here as yet? All right. Then now, let's start with Mr. Lenworth Fulton, OD, the President of the Jamaica Agricultural Society, who will be speaking on the endorsement of this plan. Mr. Fulton?
Let me thank you, Madam Moderator, Ministers Darrell Vaz and Floyd Green, Permanent Secretary Ms. Sewell, Mr. Shukir, MP Mrs. Vaz, public officials, colleagues, friends, good morning. It is a long journey to have a development like this approved. I must remember when I first came in as president of the Jamaica Agriculture Society, and we have long discussions at our board on it. And as a result, I wrote the Minister Vaz on the 8th of May 2019, and the first request I made to Minister Vaz is to say to him that our decision is to have all Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 lands preserved for agriculture. However, since Bernard Lodge is so placed at a particular position in our country, Kingston is creeping westward, and so therefore it reached in that space. Spanish Town, sort of to the north, is also in a bad state and is creeping in that direction. And Old Harbor is moving from a westerly direction more so towards the east. So we need to discuss. And I said to him, let us preserve more lands for agriculture and see if we could accommodate the investment and the development that is happening there. I also said to him in the letter that we must preserve the watershed that protects the Ryacobre, Rio Minnow, and Black River, etc., in whatever plan. In the letter, I also said to Minister Vaz, and I beg him to speak to the National Housing Trust, that whatever land the National Housing Trust has, with a very powerful act that they can go and build without even saying anything to the parish council, They have that power. But to speak to them, to protect agriculture in their quest, although we need houses. Where the Housing Trust has agricultural lands, let us walk carefully, because the people must be housed, but we have to find a solution. And I said to Minister Vaz, if you're going to use those lands, we're asking you for the best hospital in the world, one which will make the Kingston Public Hospital, the UC Hospital, and my neck of the woods, the St. Anne's Bay Hospital, become ordinary clinics. Build a good hospital for the people. Because I've given up my home at St. Jago Heights to live in Bridgeport. And I still have the opportunity to live there because I still have the house. But I live in Bridgeport because I like the area. I said to Minister Vaz, let us build the best university in this part of the world if we're going to use some of the land, that the children, our children, indeed my 10-year-old, will have a brighter future by going to a university with courses that the University of the West Indies and UTEC and MICO and all the rest never even thought to offer, much less to offer them. So those were some of the conditions. And then I wrote a Gleaner article on some of these points, and I got the most criticisms. I have to lock my phone down. And they responded and called me a contortionist and this and that. And I said, listen, we have to find a way there. And the reason why I took the position, because there were 20,000 acres of land. There's only 5,000 left. All administration in Jamaica, the JLP and the PNP have built houses on those lands. The last major development was that of Greater Portmore that was built on the Reed Spen Division at Bernard Lodge. But I said to Minister Vaz, and I'm going to beg all of you who have the authority to grant the Jamaica Agricultural Society this favor. Never, never do any more housing or concrete development and any other Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 lands. Let us use legislation to protect them, and since this has begun, let's now draw the line. And that is the position that I hold. And that is the position that differs from some member of my board. They wanted me to draw the line before this. And I said, this has started. This is in motion. So let us finish this, preserve whatever land, most of the land for agriculture, and then we protect all other agricultural lands. And so therefore, I have had in this quest some other issues that I have solved. I don't think any other leader have gone to Minister Vaz's office more often than me. I don't think so. I don't think any minister gets more letter than I have written to settle land issues in all 14 parishes. Monday morning, I met Minister Vaz and Mrs. Magister at his office to talk about 54 farmers in St. Anne, which we are going to settle amicably. But I want to use this podium also to say to our farmers in Jamaica, you can't just see a piece of land, and because you know it's government land, you go on it. Because sometimes there's some plans for these lands 10, 15, 20 years back that you will prevent from happening. You need to go through the right channel to get the land. And I'll say to Minister Vaz and the ministers here, we have to try as hard as possible to put our farmers on land, because without no land, there's no agriculture. I certainly hope that some of these issues we can solve. I invite Mr. Shukir a Wednesday ago to discuss all of this with the board of the Jamaica Agricultural Society. In the same way the governor of the bank, the present governor, has come to discuss the bank's progress and plan with the board. And in the same way, Wednesday morning gone, I have met with the Commissioner of Police to discuss his plans for perennial larceny. And we are going to find an amicable way to treat our farmers and to ensure that they will not be disenfranchised. And whatever relocation that might happen, although that is the last resort, we will treat them fairly in giving them back similar development so that they can continue with their lives. The Jamaica Agricultural Society is the voice of the farmer, and we stand resolute to defend them. But in their defense, we will also have to plot a path where other development will not be stymied by our obstinance, our sometimes political views, sometimes our blindness to other issues that the country might want to move forward. And so I give my blessing to this project and sincerely hope that those requests not to touch any more Class 1 land is observed, and to protect the watershed, and to ensure in the letter to you that those who are on the land do not use overhead sprinkler and flood system to preserve the water. Let's use the pressurized system, which we call drip irrigation. All of that we ask, and I sincerely hope that those can be observed. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for this invitation, and I sincerely hope that me and my farmers will continue to coexist and coexist well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. Very, very important and interesting points you've raised in terms of orderly development, that people just can't, find a land that's government and then, say that they're taking it over. But two, I can assure you that throughout this press conference, you'll be pleasantly surprised in terms of some of the information that will come out in terms of incorporating elements of what you have also spoken about. The framework for the Greater Bernard Lodge Development Master Plan was as a result of extensive consultation with stakeholders and residents in the area. It resulted from several deliberations by Cabinet and even visits by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Minister Vaz, several other government officials and state agencies. The Sugar Company of Jamaica has also been very, very critical in this process. They've been meticulous and judicious in working to ensure that we get it right and ensure that all stakeholders are involved. And so let me welcome the Managing Director of the Sugar Company of Jamaica Holdings Limited, Mr. Joseph Shakir, who will walk you through all those matters that they have deliberated and make some presentations too on the final outcome. Mr. Shakir?
Me. Sorry. It's in a perilous location. It's not going to stay there.
Eh?
It's not going to stay there.
Yeah, they are.
It's not going to stay there. Morning, everybody. Morning. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ministers, P.S. Sewell, Mrs. Vaz, ladies and gentlemen. My role is twofold. I am the CEO of FCJ Holdings Limited, which is the promoter of the master plan development, as well as the chairman of the enterprise team appointed by the government to oversee the implementation of the master plan. Master plan was approved by Cabinet originally in March 2018. An enterprise team was appointed in July of that year after a number of discussions, meetings, interventions. The Prime Minister, as the moderator mentioned, came to the project site to view the project area, as did the Minister of Finance, as did Minister Vaz. Certain changes were made to the development master plan. In particular, the inclusion of an additional 1,330 acres of agricultural land. I'm just going to ask if you could just take a look at what the master plan looks like. This is the revised master plan, and this was approved by Cabinet on the 3rd of February of this year. This is after consultations and public representations. Really the only difference is the inclusion of this large agricultural area here. Known in the area as Salt Pond, we have renamed Bernard Lodge South. I'm going to ask that we show you now the parish boundaries and try to place the development for you so you can visualize where we are talking about. So, this is the Kingston metropolitan area, the Spanish Town metropolitan area.
Sorry, Joseph.
I'm sorry. The Spanish Town metropolitan area, existing Portmore, and the Bernard Lodge Estate, the Greater Bernard Lodge Estate. This is the area of the Bernard Lodge Estate that is designated for the project. It is the natural extension, my friends, of the urbanization of this part of the southeast coast. Eventually, they will all merge. It is the logical location for an expansion of this general metropolitan region. Now, Cabinet also approved a number of things on February the 3rd. Among them was that the area should be designated a housing area under the Housing Act. That is, the areas to be developed in housing as well as the areas designed for amenities to support the housing area. Cabinet also approved, on the recommendation of the Water Resources Authority, a redesignation of the Aquifer Protection Zone and the consequent amendment of the Portmore Municipality and the St. Catherine Provisional Development Orders, as well as the award of the contract to provide water and sewerage to the master plan area to Kankara Developments Limited. Now, can I again show you what the revised master plan looks like? And I'm going to ask that you keep it there. Keep it in your mind. So broadly, the green areas represent agricultural areas. What you call that color? Ochre. That ochre area represents housing development. And the blue area represents mixed use. Of the total acreage of 5,300 acres, approximately 3,070 acres are designated for agriculture, or 56% of the master plan area is designated for agriculture. Only a very small proportion is designated for housing development. 28%? Yeah, 28%. I don't want to talk for too long, but I mentioned my dual roles, and it's important because as developer, as promoter of the development, SCJ Holdings is the owner of the lands. And the first task of SCJ Holdings was to make the lands saleable. Now, there were a number of leases that existed within the development area. The first task was to relocate the leases, the lessees affected, that will be affected by construction. They have been or will be relocated to the green areas inside of the master plan, as well as the additional area to the south. Altogether, we are relocating 216 lessees, 106 formal leases, 106 formal lessees, and 55 informal settler farmers who had no security before. The Prime Minister gave clear instructions that they should be regularized. They have all been provided with leases, and can I say to you, they have started off with a bang. We have already relocated 40 lessees, and I am particularly proud by the work that the informal settler farmers have been doing. I don't know if Mikhail can show you just a visual of the work that they have already started in the few months that they have been relocated.
Wow.
This is their work out by Grange Lane. And this is all brand new, and this has occurred within the past 3 or 4 months. So let's go back to the master plan. So the first thing we had to do was to relocate the lessees. It's not an easy job. The natural instinct of people is to want to stay where they are. That's how we are constructed. So we had to coax, we had to inform, we had to meet with. And I had taken the decision to meet face to face with every one of them. Any lessee farmer who has cash crops will not be disturbed until they reap their cash crops. Those that have orchard crops have their crops valued by RADA, and they're compensated for the orchard crops as well as for any construction that they have erected on the leasehold interest. Prime Minister has further instructed that they be given a rental concession in the first year to give them breathing space to re-establish themselves. That is the SCJ holding side. Now, the enterprise team. The enterprise team was appointed in July 2018. I chair that team, and it is comprised of 5 other individuals. Desmond Young, who is a civil engineer, Martin Addington, who is a planner, Mr. Strawn, who is a chartered accountant, Frederick Moore, who is a developer, and Maurice Jones, a civil engineer. We are supported by a number of state agencies. We have invited the St. Catherine and Portmore municipalities to send representatives to meetings of the enterprise team. The St. Catherine Council has sent representatives to every meeting. The Portmore municipality has not. I have written them on more than one occasion inviting them, but they have declined my invitations or have not responded to it. So our first task as enterprise team was to look at the master plan, understand it, and determine whether any adjustments were required so that an appropriate recommendation could be made to Cabinet. Then we had to meet with the providers of the shared infrastructure. Our principal task as enterprise team at this stage is to oversee the implementation of the shared infrastructure. And what is that shared infrastructure? It is water and sewerage, it is roads, electricity, broadly. The first task will be to install water and sewerage, as well as to construct this new highway that will dissect the southern part of the development. Adjustments will be made to Grange Lane, to the Bernard Lodge Road, and to various intersections. So this is the I-95 here, or Municipal Boulevard, so you get a sense of where you are. This is the old Bernard Lodge Sugar Factory. So I think you can place it in your minds as to where we're talking about. we have been challenged because in this development area is also inhabited by a number of informal communities that have been neglected over the years. Of particular significance is the informal community of Clifton, which contains about 2,000 individuals who are descendants of former employees of the sugar estate. We have realized and recognized that we cannot move forward without demonstrating that they too will benefit from the implementation of the master plan. Clifton, for example, has no water, no potable water. We will ensure that they get a supply of potable water. We have gone into Clifton. The guys have told us they wanted a play field. We are in the process of constructing a play field. We've engaged the Ministry of National Security to help us to refurbish the community center. At Dunbeholden, which is another informal community over there, we have negotiated a sponsorship with the Dunbeholden football team. And that football team will help us to establish and train young footballers in the Clifton area. In essence, the master plan is designed to move away from that dormitory community that Portmore has become. Here, we will provide opportunities where you can live and you can work within short distance. And you don't have to commute through the clogged roads. Yeah. Now, existing sewage plants within the master plan area will be retired. And the central sewage system originating in Sydenham and the property of Kankara will be expanded, and the central sewer system constructed throughout the development. So all the informal settlers will benefit from the central sewage plant, as well as the new residents and occupiers developed areas. I've done with water already. Water now, I will say to you, the Water Resources Authority has already licensed Kankara. Kankara has 3 licensed wells that have sufficient capacity to serve the master plan area. And it is from those wells that water will be transported across the master plan area. The next task is to get the construction underway. I can tell you today, as I have told everybody in the area, that every step of the way we will keep all interested parties advised of our progress, and we will take on board whatever suggestions that are made that we feel can have a meaningful impact on our program. It's an exciting time for us at the enterprise team. After 2 years of deliberation, we can at last now start to implement. Those are my few remarks. Thank you.
You can tell the excitement of Mr. Shakur, right? Okay. You know, one of the things I just wanted to drill down and highlight, which may have missed you, is that the Prime Minister has given clear instructions that nobody should be removed before crops are reaped. That there deserves a round of applause. Also, that the SCJ is not only investing in the community, but building institutions in the community by ensuring that even... All right, are we good? Let me try this one. All right, this one is working. Good. By ensuring that the football club is properly sponsored. So thank you so much, SCJ, for that. May I, formally I did to all government agencies, but I see Peter Knight, we're talking about the environment. Peter Knight, CD, the Executive Director of NEPA, is here, Mr. Knight. Thank you so much. As well as the Chief Technical Director in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. There are also representatives from NWA, NIC, and NAC. Oh yeah, oh the 2C, oh mercy me. Hi, both CTDs indeed. Yes, you have good support. All right. So I want to just shift up our program a little bit because Mr. Shakir went to the environment and water. I want to invite Mr. Peter Clark, JP, Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority, to give a quick presentation because I know there are concerns about aquifers and those things. Well, he'll speak specifically to that. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark. You can come.
Good morning. Thank you, Moderator Naomi Francis. Honorable Darrell Vaz MP, Minister without Portfolio, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Honorable Floyd Green, MP, Minister of State, Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. My PS, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, CD, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. MPs present, Anne-Marie Vaz from East Portland. Other members of Parliament, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's now afternoon, okay. All right, so we're back with this one. Thank you. The Water Resources Authority, as the name implies, has overall responsibility for the island's water resources, both surface water in the form of streams and rivers, and groundwater, which normally we tap into by way of wells. As such, and with this responsibility, we've been consulted by the enterprise team for the Greater Bernard Lodge development. And within this consultation, our activities would, of course, include the review of the plan, and with particular respect to any water supply or water resource issues therein. With these resources being our main, but not our only interest, where we have given support to the plan. But this support was not given carte blanche. There are many stipulations that are specifically required, and I shall outline some shortly. But the general points of concern were: one, a section of the proposed development falls within an aquifer protection zone for the alluvium aquifer, which is directly underneath a lot of the area. And the second thing, which has been spoken to by Mr. Shakir, is the matter of water needs. And it's both domestic and commercial. These needs must be met. So with regard to the APZ, the Aquifer Protection Zone, it had been designated in 2004 as a no-build zone. And this would have been so determined at the time because with the available technology, that would have been what would have been prudent. Subsequently, we in Jamaica, the Water Resources Authority, and my staff, we have been exposed to and we have been trained in measures that have brought about improvement in our monitoring capabilities. We further note that any change of land use in the development area from agriculture or any significant departure from the traditional crop, sugarcane, meant that aquifer recharge of that same underlying alluvium aquifer would diminish, largely because of the method that sugarcane was being irrigated, which is a flood method. We all probably have seen a sugarcane growing, and the roots for a sugarcane probably don't go more than 6 or 8 inches from the stalk itself. However, in flood irrigation, the entire fields are flooded, and the unused water from that irrigation process was largely recharging the aquifer under consideration. With this now being out of the picture, it is determined that sustainable development methods that utilize captured surface water runoff and treated grey water discharge in detention ponds and swales and retention ponds can effectively provide continued substantial recharge for this alluvium aquifer. With regards to the water needs, a managed artificial recharge facility was constructed in 2014. This is for the replenishment of the nearby limestone aquifer. So we have alluvium aquifers, which are largely sandy, and limestone aquifers, which are largely rocky. In collaboration with the National Irrigation Commission, the water resources, through funding that was provided by the IDB and managed by the National Water Commission, engineered by Rural Water Supply Limited, so it has been a collaborative effort. This facility was constructed. It has the potential to put 8 million gallons of water back into the limestone aquifer. At this stage, it's putting, based on what we get from the NIC, approximately 5 million gallons. And that is because they do have their own needs at this time. In other times, when there are not so much irrigation, agriculture needs that the NIC would have been committed to, they can then even turn some more water. Correct, Mr. Giles? Thank you, sir. I need that nod every time. So, in improving the water reserves available to augment overall water demand, this is now happening since some water needed for the development will have to come from outside of the development. Thus, now, we in Jamaica now can, like most other countries, determine and stipulate how best to develop an APZ, an aquifer protection zone, and make it an enhanced protection area. That was the purpose of our that was the result of our deliberations. So as mentioned, there are particular stipulations. I won't give the full details, but for instance, these stipulations involve intense solid waste management, wastewater management, stormwater management, restrictive covenants pertaining to the types of commercial activities that can take place within the development area, provisioning of buffer zones around existing wells, and there are a number of them, and, as has been alluded to again by Mr. Shook here, the regularization of informal, and I shall use his word, communities. This regularization is welcomed because as things stand, and if things stay as they are, what is happening and as things currently exist is not the best situation for this aquifer. So all of these clearly will require robust and consistent monitoring, and it will require a collaborative response from agencies. So all of us will be in this thing together. It must be emphasized again that doing nothing would not be in the best interest of the alluvium aquifer. By engineering systems, by putting in systems, engineering systems associated with development, by strict enforcement of stipulated conditions, we can now transform an aquifer protection zone into an enhanced protection area. There will be a question and answer section later, so I'm sure that there will be further questions. But as things stand, thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clark. You know, I'm into headlines like the media every now and again, and my headline is there is really no threat to the aquifers. Really? That's the essence, given all the tests and studies that have been done. Thank you so much. Let's move then quickly. We have a lot of presentations because we want to ensure that the media and the public fully understands that this was not just a decision taken lightly. There was a lot of work that went in based on instructions from the Prime Minister. There were a lot of agencies that were engaged, a lot of studies done, persons who were consulted before we get to this process. And so bear with us because we're making sure that you fully understand all the levels that we went through. And so let me invite now Mr. Milverton Reynolds, CD, the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica, with his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And and I was going to say, all protocols have so elegantly been observed by the moderator. But I do want to recognize the ministers that are here. Minister Darrell Vaz, and also Minister Floyd Green, and of course the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, who really is my true boss. So I have to recognize her. You know, it is really a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon, just to say a few words on the role of the Development Bank of Jamaica in this really, as Joe has outlined, very important project, the Greater Bernard Lodge Master Plan Development. And so the SCJ Holdings, through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, has sought the engagement of the DBJ to be the transaction managers for the divestment of lands allocated for the following uses. And I think Joe may have indicated some of these. Residential, they're going to be detached residential units, townhouses, commercial, mixed use, and light development. Of course, you would be aware that the DBJ is the government's central implementing agency for all public-private partnerships and privatization. We call it the P4 activities in the country. The inclusion of the DBJ on this project as transaction managers for the divestment of the specific blocks mentioned earlier provides a high level of transparency on this transaction, given that a fundamental principle that governs the conduct of the privatization project is that projects are handled at arm's length and equal opportunity be given to all potential investors. And so the DBJ will ensure that certain principles are adhered to. And these include, but not limited to, there's value for money. There is transparency and probity, limiting the fiscal risks for the government, achieving cost recovery, and of course, accountability to cabinet. As transaction managers, along with the legal consultant on the project, we will solely be responsible for managing and executing the competitive tender process on behalf of SCJ Holdings and specific identified lands in the Bernard Lodge development. The DBJ will, of course, support the appointed enterprise team that Mr. Shakir referred to, and the SCJ Holdings to ensure that the activities undertaken comply with the policy direction of the government, and as you've heard, the direction of the Prime Minister as well and the government, are guided by market and economic valuations. Once the preliminary steps to facilitate the transactions are undertaken by the enterprise team and the consultants, and all the necessary approvals from the relevant authorities are in place, the DBJ will begin the management of the competitive tender process. And this included the issuing of requests for proposal, placing advertisements in print and electronic media, both locally and internationally, coordinating and facilitating external communication among stakeholders, facilitating potential investors' due diligence on the project as required, facilitating the evaluation of bids received, including the preparation of a bid evaluation report, coordinating communication with all bidders, among other transaction activities. Once the preferred bidders are selected, the same must be submitted to Cabinet for approval. As I said, we are very pleased to be part of this project, which seeks to create really an ideal municipality for the Jamaican public and will present affordable, quality housing and integrated development with the aim to create a sustainable socio-economic environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Very important there, and Mr. Reynolds touched on some very key points that I want everybody to just ensure that they remember and recognize. This process will be transparent, first of all. It will go through competitive tendering processes, and of course, all due diligence will be observed. And again, it has been a process of a meticulous engagement with all the stakeholders, and the DBJ certainly is no better agency to assist in the management of this project. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the Honorable Floyd Green. We told you that this is a project that will have a mixed-use kind of strategic outlay, and so Minister Green, representing the Minister of Agriculture, will be speaking with us concerning that component of the project. Minister Green.
Thank you very much, Naomi, Minister Vaz, and other members of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, of course, P.S. Sewell, Mr. Shakir, other specially invited guests and members of the media. Good afternoon, everybody. Clearly, from where we stand at the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries, we want to ensure that not only is there land for agriculture, but that land is put into active production. I think part of the challenge that we've had across our history is that we have had access to land, but oftentimes that land is not being put into active production. And again, it serves really no purpose unless we're finding ways, especially through partnership, to ensure that that land is producing. And I think that is why we are interested, excited about the Greater Bernard Lodge Development Master Plan, especially for the land that's put for agriculture and what will happen with that land. So I will briefly take you through a presentation. I think one of the important things to note is that only 794 acres of the land in Bernard Lodge was in active production. That's only 25% of the land that we had here. Now we have reserved 3,028 acres of the master plan that will be devoted towards agriculture. And the bigger point is that we expect to put that land into production in the short term. We expect within 3 to 5 years to have that full 3,000 acres in full-term production. I think that is an important step, especially if we're going to treat with issues such as our import bill. As you may see, you would have seen it before, but again, just to give you a visual of the Bernard Lodge, Greater Bernard Lodge development, and I will come back to that slide. But again, you've heard there are some leases in the Greater Bernard Lodge area, and now there are 171 agricultural leases in the Greater Bernard Lodge area. Our plan is to increase that number to at least 235 under the master plan. As you've heard, and as I will again reiterate, part of what we're doing is to ensure that the 55 or so farmers that we have who are informal settlers on the land, who are farming, that those are given priorities and that they're given real leases that give them security of tenure so that they can farm without wondering if they will ever be moved. And they're part of the process that we're catering to. So clearly the leases will be given to form a variety of crops, a number of cash crops, orchard crops. We're going into all areas. One of the things, clearly, sugar has been on the decline, but where you see challenge, we have to see opportunity. And we believe that there are a number of crops, including cannabis and castor beans, that we believe can plug that gap and, in fact, even lead to greater returns. So there is a new agricultural subdivision, and if you go back to the picture of the area, that is that green segment to the bottom, that's 1,330 acres, which we call Bernard Lodge South, that is in the Salt Pond area, and it is comprised of 60 parcels of leased land. But again, what we have found, if agriculture is really to work, it has to be a true partnership. So it's one thing to have the land and to provide the land, but we have found oftentimes you provide the land, but those who are interested do not have the resources to start production. And that's one of the mistakes that we've made time and time again. So not only are we providing this 1,330 acres, the plan is that the land will be cleared, it will be plowed, it will be furrowed, and in fact, a state-of-the-art pressurized irrigation system will be put into that 130 acres. And based on my information, procurement has already started for that state-of-the-art irrigation system for that 130 acres. So I think that is a big step. 1,330 acres. Also, we're going to put electrical connections, first time that it will be done on that site. So the plan is that no farmer who is presently in the Bernard Lodge area will be left behind. We have 106 lessee farmers, 55 informal settlers. All of them will be relocated. And again, they will not be relocated until they are able to reap the cash crops that they presently have in the ground. Again, we think that is very, very important. And where they have orchard crops, and we do have some farmers who have orchard crops, they will be valued and they will be compensated as they move to a new site. Also, they will be given a concession for rental for the first year to ensure that they don't have to worry about the rental costs as they re-establish on a new property. And again, everything will be formalized. But there are also some other services that will now be offered. Right now, again, the farmers are out there on their own. And again, we have found that it is challenging if you don't have effective extension services that can reach to our farmers, that can help them, introduce them to new technology, and help them with the onset of disease, and really help guide them in their process. Part of what we're doing in this new development model is that we're really going after the mother farm concept that has worked very well in other jurisdictions, other developed countries, where you have a mother farm that has sufficient technology, expertise, investment, who can then provide extension services. So it's not a burden on the government, it's not a burden on RADA, but this mother farm will provide people with the expertise who will go out into the area, work with those small farmers, but not only are you working with them, you're providing them with a market that once they farm, they have a set market. And I think all of us know one of the big challenges in Jamaica and in our agricultural structure is that linkage. So, you know, you farm, you hear you have gluts, and you lose, and you can't find a market. We're trying to treat with that, with this Greater Bernard Lodge development plan. And already we have Cost Club Limited, who have come on board as a big investor in the space, and you would have heard in the paper significant investment of over $11 billion in the same Bernard Lodge space. They will help to provide modern high-tech farming methods, they will provide guaranteed markets, and they will offer general extension service. And we also have the Model Agricultural Production Limited, another agricultural company which is going to be operated in Innswood, stone's throw, quite frankly, away from the Bernard Lodge area, that will help to provide these services. The final thing that I will treat with, what we want, again, is through this partnership, be able to provide systems that will work for our farmers. So we're going to be looking at a full revamp of the irrigation network in the Greater Bernard Lodge area. Again, strong irrigation work, unfortunately, old, a number of old pipes. A lot of the wells that were initially dug would have outlived their lifespan. Some of them would have collapsed. So the NIC team have put together a full revamp of the irrigation system there. We want to ensure that we introduce our farmers to modernize agricultural farming processes, and we plan to rehabilitate 7 wells, construct 12 new wells, construct new pumping stations. In fact, we're looking to work with the canals, construct new pumping stations on the canals, the reshaping and lining of the canals, to put in new underground piping. Some of the pipes that were there, unfortunately, were laid in the time when asbestos pipes were the thing to do. We want to move away from that, so we're going to do new pipes, new hydrants, and of course, road and drainage rehabilitation. So we're going to be working with the NIC to do a full overhaul of the irrigation systems in the Greater Bernard Lodge area. The final thing, one of the things that we are trying to do right across agriculture, we want much more strategic farming. We don't want to just put a farmer to a plot and say, go and farm. We want to say to the farmer, listen, we have analyzed the soil. This is the pH. This is the nutrient status of the soil. This is our management approach, and these are the crops that we suggest should be farmed. One of the good things with this project is that we're analyzing every inch of agricultural soil that we have there to know the pH level and to give to the farmers so that they can farm from an informed position. Also, we want to work with them in relation to the fertilizers that they use. We hope a number of our farmers will embark on an organic farming methodology. This is the way of the world now. So the bigger picture is that we're taking a holistic view. It's not just about the amount of lands that you have. It's about what are you doing with the land, and importantly, what infrastructure support is the government providing that can ensure that our farmers will do well. I'm very confident that in the 3,000 acres that have been reserved for farming, we will see a significant uptick in production, not in the long term, but in the short term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Green. And again, in terms of just, highlighting a few of the things that Minister Green touched on, the government intends to ensure that 3,000 of the acres on the Bernard Lodge Greater Development Master Plan project is in full-term production. Also, that they will increase agricultural leases, very important. So you have 170-something farmers present now in the area. The plan is to increase the number of farmers within the area. That deserves a round of applause. And none of the farmers there presently will be disenfranchised. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've spoken about what will happen to the farmers. We've given you an idea of what will happen in terms of agricultural land use. We've also told you about the water and irrigation plans, housing plans, and really this is to just put on a broad heading how we intend to ensure there is modern, strategic, holistic, orderly development of the Greater Bernard Lodge area. Well, the man who has been carrying this project in cabinet really is our final speaker. He is the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, the Honorable Darrell Vaz.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Colleague Minister Green, my PS and my boss, PS Sewell, Sir Joe Shakir, and of course, all the heads of agencies and invited guests, and last but not least, the media, who is most important on this occasion. Let me start by saying to all the ladies here, Happy Valentine's Day, especially to Action Ann, who is here with me. And before I start as it relates to Bernard Lodge Master Plan, I feel obliged and obligated to just say a quick word on my tour of GISCO in Maine, St. Elizabeth yesterday, which was a road trip, and of course many other media houses may not have been there. It is an absolute crisis what is happening down there as a result of the closure, temporary closure of GISCO. I met with the management, the senior Jamaican management, along with all of the agencies that are involved as it relates to the dust nuisance, which is coming from the 650-acre mud lake, as we call it. And what is happening is that as a result of the drought, there's been no rain at that site from December 10th until now. And with the high winds that we get from time to time, there is several dust events. And I actually toured the communities, and it is an absolute health crisis as it relates to the residents. So I just want to reassure the communities that it is something that government will be pursuing to find a solution with GISCO that we can actually get the mud lake and keep it wet during this period of closure until such time as they invoke new technologies and new equipment in their reopening plan. But just to say that it is something at the top of my list as a priority, and I'm committing to them that I will continue to monitor it personally as minister and to make sure that we do what we can do as soon as possible. So that's the news from yesterday. So let's get to the news of today. In March 2018, Cabinet first approved the Greater Bernard Lodge Development Master Plan. A year later, in 2019, the Most Honorable Prime Minister instructed that the Development Master Plan be reviewed based on concerns that were shared in the public domain. This was done, and in August 2019, he announced that the adjustments that were to be made would be made public by me following the approval of Cabinet. I want to stop and pause to congratulate NEPA and all the agencies that worked with NEPA in relation to coming up with this master plan. They were mandated and did a fantastic job with the inputs and consultation of many non-NGOs and other professionals. So ladies and gentlemen, in January 2020, a few weeks ago, Cabinet approved the revised Development Master Plan, and this press conference is the fulfillment of those assurances that were given by the Prime Minister in 2019. In keeping with the government's commitment to public consultation and transparency in achieving sustainable development and growth, that is a top priority of the government. The United Nations estimate that close to 55% of the global population, or 4 billion people, live in urban areas. By 2030, it is expected that more than 60% of the population will similarly live in urban areas. We have seen similar trends in Jamaica, with the vast majority of the population living in and moving to urban and metropolitan areas. The Greater Bernard Lodge Master Plan will seek to primarily address several housing, agriculture, and infrastructural issues within the project area simultaneously. This includes accommodating future population growth for the Kingston metropolitan region created by NEPA in collaboration with several key stakeholders from both the private and public sectors. Create and maintain a vibrant and sustainable community to protect its character and longevity while tackling the challenges of affordable housing, transportation, access to jobs and services. You would have heard earlier the mention of a dormitory community which is what Portmore is and has been. That will change with the implementation of the Bernard Lodge Master Plan, because you will find people being able to live, work, and do business right within the same area in which they exist and coexist. It is also consistent with the growth, employment, and poverty reduction strategy of the government. This development will affect approximately 106 lessees and 55 informal settlers who occupy a total of 1,782.365 acres. All affected persons will be compensated and/or relocated. I want to pause here because I know that there has been a lot of misinformation over the last year or two in relation to this. The directive from the government at the highest level, being the Prime Minister, is that all persons are to be looked, their cases are to be dealt with individually, and make sure that we get an amicable agreement in relation to those persons that are here. So I want to assure Mr. Fulton that to date, nobody has been forcibly removed, and we have tried to the best of our ability to avoid any litigation. And so far, that is working, and I want to congratulate SCJ and the team for carrying out that mandate in a very compassionate way, because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, this is a holistic approach for the benefit of everybody. So the compensation was mentioned of before by Minister Green and Mr. Shukir in relation to how we proceed. And basically, everybody, whether you are legitimate, informal, doesn't matter. Everybody is being treated the same to regularize them, relocate them, and compensate them, individual case by case. On the issue of land use, I must again, for clarity, indicate that in our discussions and negotiations with the Ministry of Agriculture's Land Management Unit, who approved the change of use for the land as part of the master plan, had a conditionality that Cabinet approved, Mr. Fulton, and that is that there will be no further change of use of agricultural land in and around that entire area. So you can rest assured that is a Cabinet decision. So only the Cabinet can overturn that. And we have no intention of doing any such thing. And of course, we are well aware of the concerns as it relates to food security and production, as Minister Green spoke to. The original master plan, and this is important, ladies and gentlemen, was 3,948 acres. That's the one that we approved first, of which 1,717 acres, or 43%, was agriculture, and 2,231 acres, or 57%, being non-agriculture. As a result of the concerns that were raised by JS and other interest groups, we have revised the master plan, which is now 5,384 acres, of which 56% of that 5,384 acres will be devoted to agricultural use, 28% for residential use, and the remaining 16% for utilities, open space, and commercial use. We therefore have increased the agricultural allocation from 43% in the first master plan to 56% in the revised master plan. That simply means that government, or this government, listens to the people and acts accordingly. The development, as was mentioned, will also improve several areas of infrastructure, including the provision of potable water, sewage and waste management, and drainage, road rehabilitation in the Greater Portmore area, aquifer protection, and regularization of agricultural lots. Most importantly, again, the master plan will not take away from existing communities, but will enhance the infrastructural legacy deficit which exists through the development, which is part of the remit of the master plan. What am I saying, ladies and gentlemen? We are not going to take any of the water that is currently serving communities for which there are major complaints. We are going to make sure that it enhances not only to provide for the master plan area, but for areas that have been having issues with water and sewage. Road infrastructure, there's going to be major road. I see Mr. Varden down there from NWA who works with the enterprise team. So all those issues of infrastructure, roads and drainage that are being experienced by existing communities as a result of this plan, they will see improvements while we put in the new infrastructure that is going to be required to facilitate this plan. What do I speak about? I speak about works that will be carried out on Grange Lane, Dunby Holding Main Road, Passage Fort and Dyke Road intersection, and the Bernard Lodge Main Road. Because of increased traffic, you will have to increase and expand and widen, as we have done on Hagley Park Road, as we have done on Constant Spring Road. So it's time for Portmore and the surrounding communities to feel some of that prosperity. Yes? What does it include? It includes additional traffic signal lights, the number of lanes, adding pedestrian crossings, rehabilitation of corridors, installation of sidewalks and street lights, and the construction of a 4-lane bridge across Highway 2000 east-west. So you're going to see significant infrastructure improvements. How do we get to do those infrastructure improvements when there's so much demand all over Jamaica for funds to do infrastructure? We are not going to stress the new greater infrastructure program that the Prime Minister just announced the other day, going from the major infrastructure now to the greater, which is going to see many areas of the country. We have come up with a creative way. So, aside and apart from landowners purchasing land from government, that will be a government transaction. There is going to be an infrastructure cess that is going to be required to be paid by the purchasers of the land, for which they will form a company, for which a private company with no government involvement, and they will carry out the infrastructure upgrades according to government's policy position. So for those persons who think that the plan has not been thought out in its entirety, it's not a plan that is in the pipeline. This is a plan that we want to execute and implement in the shortest possible time. And the only thing that would hold it up would be for the government to find a way to put the necessary infrastructure in place so that people can develop. So all of that has been thought out. It has gone through the Attorney General's department. It has gone through everywhere so that we make sure that we are not in breach of the divestment and procurement guidelines. So ladies and gentlemen, the lands that we are going to sell and lease, and I want Milverton to listen carefully, is not how we used to sell land and lease land, which is why only 25% of the lands were in production You know why? Because there was no performance clause in those government divestments, which would make it a must that there is a timeline to develop, and if you do not develop within that timeline, the land automatically is reverted to the government of Jamaica at whatever it is was the negotiated terms and price at the time. So there's nothing about courthouse, where you lease a person land on a performance basis. They don't perform, and you have to take them to court to get back your land. That's what obtains now. Going forward, we are going to make sure that any lease that we do or any divestment has a specific timeline and a specific performance in relation to what is going to be done and how that land is going to be used. And that way, Minister Green, you will see the productivity of the land that is being leased or sold for agriculture, and you will see the development, commercial and otherwise, as it relates to the non-agricultural land. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to mean the transformation for Portmore and other sections of St. Catherine that will be the start of a smart city. This media briefing will be the first of many during the execution of the development, which includes a robust community consultation and citizen awareness and education efforts. As a matter of fact, the first one is scheduled for next week, Thursday, February 20th, for the residents of Dumby in Phoenix Park, Barbara Village, Salt Pond Gardens. And a professional team will be there to present, just like how we present here today, and to field questions and also take recommendations, suggestions, because it's never too late to make changes if it is that those changes make sense and are enhance what we already have. So those persons who may hear the press conference and hear the statements will have an opportunity, as those persons are the ones who live there and know better than any planner exactly what some of the intricacies are as it relates to that. In closing, because if this doesn't work, I don't think I'll have a job. So I have to make it work, because I know the passion in which the Prime Minister has, and I know the faith and confidence that he has put in me. I want to make it very clear that this has been and will continue to be, despite anything that may be said and done, a bipartisan approach, because nothing can work in Jamaica properly unless you have that buy-in on all levels. So again, it is never too late. I am saying very clearly that we will continue, Joe, the team, continue to invite to consultations, and even when we don't get a response, we will continue to invite and invite and invite. So it will never be said that we are doing anything without reaching out and inviting all persons, including political parties, to be involved in this game changer for St. Catherine specifically. And I want to say that, in closing, the majority of this falls within the St. Catherine Municipal Council, who have sent representatives, technical representatives, to every meeting of the enterprise team. So let it not be said. What's that?
Showing you the parish boundaries.
Oh, the parish boundaries. So they have been on board, they have been supportive, and continue to work with us. So I want to make that very clear. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, in fact, a real happy day, not only for me and my government, but for Mr. Fulton, who I know is going to leave here much happier than he came, and of course, most importantly, for the upliftment of the people of Portmore and the surrounding communities. And they have my word that I will work with everybody to make sure that this is implemented in the shortest possible time, because it means growth and jobs, which was the mandate that we were elected in 2016 to provide jobs. And my ministry is a ministry of economic growth and job creation. So PS, I think we can feel proud today that we are carrying out our mandate and will continue to do so, and hope at the end of the day that we will get a full buy-in at all levels and stratas of society so we can move Jamaica further from poverty to prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, providing a comprehensive overview there. And he used a very interesting term, game changer, and certainly transforming the entire Portmore area into Spanish Town region. And now, ladies and gentlemen of the media, it's your time to ask questions. May I invite you to raise your hands if you do have a question. When you are given a microphone, I ask that you identify yourself and your media entity. Microphones are at the back, so once you raise your hand, certainly you will have one. We ask you to stand, though, so that everyone can see you and hear. May I invite those at the head table, though, for ease of whomever will answer the question, to just stand beside me. Minister, Mr. Shakir, and Minister Green, if you could just stand to my right. If you could just stand to my right so that we're able to quickly get that done, and the question at the back. All right. All right, so I have a question at the back. Yes?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Lately from Television Jamaica. Just two very quick questions, and simply just for my clarity. If you could just remind me of the budget for the project, and indicate whether a comprehensive environmental impact assessment has been done, and whether it is available at NEPA right now.
Let me start with the budget. Bearing in mind it's not a government project, the infrastructure budget, which is the only budget that we have, is approximately $6 billion. $6 billion J dollars. The project is a project sponsored by NEPA. All of the required due diligence was done prior to cabinet approval and as a condition of cabinet approval.
I'm going to ask Mr. Knight to just speak to the availability.
Andrew, if you're looking for an environmental impact assessment report in the true sense of a report that was done and is on the website, you're not going to find that. What we did was comprehensive research analysis, went way beyond the requirements for an environmental impact assessment, and all of those were built into the master plan. So the background data and so on exists. So you're not going to see, and we went beyond that. You know, we did a strategic environmental impact assessment of this entire area, which included consultation. No, there's no need to make that available. What is available is included in the master plan, and the concepts are discussed.
All right. We have another.
No, the master plan is available, but the master plan is a proprietary document for the Sugar Company of Jamaica.
It's on the SCJ website.
And
Yes.
the master plan is on the SCJ website. Let me get to another question.
Sorry, just to say that if it is that there's any additional information that you would need after doing that, it will be made available for any questions, clarifications, because we want to make sure that it is fully transparent and no one can make any accusation in relation to us trying to hide any information.
All right, next question.
Hello, I'm Edward Rambo Media. I think it's a commendable project, particularly you upping the ante with the agricultural component. But bearing that in mind, what crops do you see predominating with the agricultural component? Bearing in mind our import food bill is what, about 850 million. What can you talk about that?
Well, presently now we have a lot of onion production, we have a lot of pepper production. The major investor thus far is looking at large vegetable crops. And I think that will go a far way. The reality is that in almost all crop types, we're nowhere near fulfilling the local demand we have, much less export demand, right? One of the beauties with the Bernard Lodge property is that most of the soil is good for almost anything, right? So you will get everything from castor beans, which, castor oil is one of the industries that we're targeting, to cannabis. We already have cannabis interests in the area, and vegetable production. You will see a whole host of vegetable production.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other questions from members of the media at the back? If we can get a microphone there.
Minister, just a quick check. You said that
you're out.
Oh, I'm Arthur Hall from the Jamaica Observer.
Observer Aglina. Oh, sorry, you're observer. All right, sorry.
You say start the public meetings next Thursday. But one of the things the Prime Minister said when he said have a look at the master plan was that consultation should have been done before the revised master plan. So why are we in reverse order?
So let me clarify that for you. Those consultations have taken place. These consultations are the wider information for the wider residents, meaning that persons who were not consulted in terms of the Citizen Association heads and the NGOs. These are just average citizens that live in and around the area that want to come to a town hall to get a presentation and also to be able to give their own input and comments. This will be their phase. So yes, those consultations that the Prime Minister ordered have happened extensively, including with the JS and others like that, but this is now to the citizenry where the average person can get an opportunity to get a proper presentation and to pose questions, concerns, and suggestions.
I'm sorry, yes, if you could, please, real quickly. You have a microphone, so everyone can hear you.
Just to add to what the minister said, he did say, Arthur, that it's work in progress, and the persons will still have the opportunity to make recommendations based on what is presented to them. So it's an ongoing process of consultation.
Thank you, Piers. And in the spirit of multi-talented media representative, we have one of our camera persons asking.
Yeah,
Can you identify yourself?
My name is William Reed from PBCJ. One of the persons I hear on radio talking a lot about this Bernard Lodge thing is Mr. Fitz Johnson. Why wasn't he invited at this meeting?
All persons with positions were invited, all MPs, the Port Marion Municipal Council through the Mayor, the CEO, St. Catherine Municipal Council through the Mayor, CEO, and several other NGOs and government entities for which most of you are here. So I can't answer why they're not here, but I can confirm that they were all invited.
Al has a follow-up, and then we can wrap up right after.
Your approach to municipal development, you've done it with St. Catherine, and I take the point you made about the dormitory kind of approach and moving away from that. Following this, are there any other areas you would probably like to replicate this, and what other area would be next on your agenda?
I know the Prime Minister is in deep consultation in relation to other areas. I think that this being such a major project that we want to see how this starts and how this unfolds so that we can tweak and make sure that the next one that we do, we would have learned from this one and implementation will be that much easier. So this one is as we call it in Jamaica, the guinea pig, and it has not been easy at all. This has been very challenging, time consuming, because we know the scrutiny and we know that we have to get it right, or else, as I said before, I don't know what will happen to me. Negril, in a different sense, that master plan is being done now in relation to the corridor, where what we want to do is to designate an area area of Negril to remain as it is with the limitations of height, and then further down going towards Sandy Bay to be able to go further up with the densities and heights. So that's a plan that's being carried out by NEPA now, and we should finish that. But that's a different type of master plan. But again, same concept. We need to make sure that we have these plans properly done so that the implementation can be that much more efficient.
Mr. Fulton, who has already endorsed the project, wanted to just...
no, he just wants to say that he now supported 200% instead of 100%.
Yeah. Minister, the only thing I'm saying is that since you're going to look on the roads, there are two roads, the Bernard Light Road and the Down Beholden Road. If it is possible to make an emergency lane on one of those roads for easy access, a large population here to hit the hospital, and also for emergency vehicle and buses to take children out and in with easy access. So I'm asking for that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. We had our first consultation, and we have gotten a fantastic suggestion, which I'm sure we overlooked, and I can assure you that that is probably one of the most best suggestions that have been made coming out of this. That is a must based on the amount of traffic that's already there and the amount that will be added to it. An emergency lane for easy access for that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that the customary handshakes will be exchanged at this point, and of course, all the persons who presented. Thank you so much, members of the media.